Chapter 25, June 28th, 2033, Seattle, Washington, USA. First floor, Illini Building, negative 61 degrees Fahrenheit, 0-103 hours. I kept my head on a swivel as I heard the other four cuss and start rushing up the lines. Larry was out of the elevator shaft maybe 30 seconds after me. He was unclipped and at the ready 10 seconds later. Castillo and Velasquez were next out, within seconds of each other. They were unclipped and scanning the room even faster than Larry. Thompson was slower, though I figured out why as soon as he crested the lip. He had the manila folders tucked into his vest and was moving to keep from crumpling the papers. He took the longest to be ready, but it was still only 45 seconds. "What contact?" asked Castillo. "I started getting a headache." "A headache? That's why you called contact?" "Let me finish, Sarge. Every time anyone gets a headache like that, weird shit happens. Conversations are forgotten, distractions occur. Weird shit." Castillo gave me the side-eye for a moment, but remained at the ready. "Fine. Move forward into the main store. Stay close," ordered Castillo. None of us responded. We began to move in a delta formation like a flight of geese. Castillo was lead and shoved the doors open. Silence greeted us. We advanced 10 feet, then 15. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned to track it, but it was still in the corner of my eye. By the time I had turned a 180, I was looking at the ceiling. My voice cracked as I uttered one word. "Contact!" A roar was loosed from the creature and I was frozen with terror. The one in the stairwell outside the office had been huge, almost 20 feet long. This creature looked to be twice that size. It locked eyes with me and something inside me changed. I was terrified, but I found a rage growing deep down. A ponderous arm the size of a mature tree started to swing at me. I managed to regain my senses and leaped out of the way as the team scattered. The creature's claws were easily 12 inches long. They dug furrows through the concrete. I pointed my rifle and pulled the trigger. It clicked impotently. "Safety, DeWeiser! Fire at will!" bellowed Castillo. I cursed myself under my breath as I thumbed the safety off. Gunfire erupted all around me. The rifle kicked into my shoulder as I started to fire into the torso of the creature. It hissed, a note so loud it rumbled in my chest even as it threatened to burst my eardrums. I heard Castillo shout something, but he was drowned out. He waited until the hiss was over and shouted again, "Retreat to the front of the store!" We all started edging away from the creature as it slithered down the wall, using some unknown means to defy gravity. It started approaching us rapidly up the main aisle, arms ready to swipe. I jumped out of the way as it swiped at me again. The massive clawed hand swept through a set of shelves like they hardly existed. Metal and debris sprayed into the air. I landed hard on my shoulder. I scrambled back to my feet and changed my aim to its head. The creature hissed as my bullets impacted the massive skull, leaving little furrows in the scaled flesh. I kept firing at the creature. Then my gun clicked on empty. "I'm out! Front doors now!" I saw him drop his rifle and say something into the handset on his shoulder. I turned from the creature and began to wind through aisles, keeping low to prevent it from seeing me. A moment later, a horrid thumping issued from the front of the store. Castillo shouted one more time, "Down!" I hit the deck as soon as he said it. I heard glass shatter and the thumping turned into thunder. I crawled to the end of the aisle to witness what the noise was. The creature was screaming now, a noise that was only matched by the sound from outside. As I reached the end of the aisle, I peeked over the shelving unit I was behind. Twin points of light blazed outside the store and tracers could be seen arcing inside, slamming into the massive creature. The gunfire continued for a few seconds more, then stopped as abruptly as it had begun. The barrels of the cannons on top of the two vehicles outside were glowing a dull red. I surveyed the store, noting bullet holes all over. The creature was still mostly upright, but it had been nearly obliterated by the storm of gunfire. The tattered torso slumped forward, then settled on the tile of the main aisle. It oozed ichor. I stepped closer. One massive arm was out of sight behind a display. I walked the long way around and found Thompson. The sight was horrible. He was purpled from the intense grip the creature had on his body. Bullets had ripped through his chest and the hand holding him. I leaned in and carefully shut his eyes. I wiggled the manila envelopes out of his vest. There was nothing else I could do for him. The envelope had one bullet hole clean through the middle. Blood had begun to stain the hole. The papers inside were likely useless now. I turned and found Castillo. He was staring at Thompson in shock. I shook my head and gently turned him away. We walked through the debris that was the front of the store. People suddenly piled out of the lead vehicle. Jesse was there, and I saw Linda and Eddie peeking around the corner. "Linda, get Eddie back in there! He doesn't need to see this!" I shouted at her. The anger and vehemence behind my words shocked them as badly as it shocked me. Jesse ran up to Larry, trying to crush him in a hug. I was glad to see her safe. I turned and trudged wearily to the lead vehicle. I looked over myself, careful not to bring any blood or ichor in with me. Somehow, in all the chaos of the previous few hours, I was free of contaminants. Even so, I held a hand up to Linda. "Don't touch me right now. I'm not sure if it's safe." Warm air billowed out from the hold of the light armored vehicle. It would fit all of the people left behind. I stepped in, careful to stay away from Linda and Eddie. Castillo and Velasquez showed up with Larry and Jesse in tow. I had already shrugged out of my coat and vest, piling them in a secure corner. They all clambered in, Larry struggling with the low ceiling. Everybody began shedding gear. The door whined shut behind them, and I heard the engine change in pitch. A moment later, a lurch told me we were on our way. The LAV could hold far more than our paltry 7. We had room to stretch out a bit, though not enough for anybody to lay down. The ride was bumpy, I figured due to all the debris on the roads. The occasional shudder made me guess that any cars that were in the way were being battered by the vehicle. Even so, we never stopped moving, only changed directions. There were no windows inside the vehicle. It didn't matter. We wouldn't be able to see much in the darkness outside the warm shell of the vehicle anyway. After my gear was off, I stepped over and sat with Linda. Eddie was on her other side. I put an arm around Linda. My breathing was ragged, and I felt nausea as everything that happened over the course of the day had caught up to me. I held my stomach, but it was a hard-fought battle. Nobody said anything for the first 15 minutes of the trip. Castillo was the first. Without his gear, he looked much smaller. He sat across from Velasquez. I could tell they were both mourning the loss of their squad mates. "What the fuck was in those papers?" I countered with my own question. "Where was that thing hiding? It was massive." "I don't know, man, but it killed Thompson." I looked at the pile of papers I held in my free hand. The bullet hole was all I could see. That and the blood that was beginning to dry. I stood, then handed the envelopes over to Castillo. I sat once more, slumping with fatigue. I glanced forward and saw Larry and Jesse, two of the toughest people I had ever known. Larry had his eyes closed, his head in her lap. Even laying on his side, he was massive compared to her slight frame. Castillo went through the papers, saying nothing. Larry and Jesse kept whispering to each other. I simply sat, staring into the void. Colors darted around in the corners of my vision, but I paid that no mind. The force deep inside me that had awakened when I met eyes with the creature kept my attention. Anger warred within me. I fought the grief, the fatigue. I was exhausted in every conceivable way. Still, my mind whirred on. Questions fought for answers. I tried to drown it out by humming. The thoughts wouldn't stop. The next thing I knew, I was laying on the bench, my head in Linda's lap. She was stroking my hair. She didn't say anything, but I didn't need her to. I closed my eyes and tried to relax. I must have dozed off because the next thing I remembered, we lurched to a stop. My watch told me it had taken just over an hour to get wherever we were. I sat up. Castillo hit a button near him and the ramp hissed open at the back of the vehicle. It slowly lowered, though my view was restricted. All I could see beyond the opening was concrete. Castillo and Velasquez squared up and walked out of the vehicle. I followed a moment later with Linda holding my hand. She guided Eddie behind her. I could hear Larry's massive footsteps and a hollow thunk as his skull hit the bulkhead. A few choice words escaped him, which surprised me. He normally didn't react to small pains. Then again, it had been a very long and stressful day. I looked around as we exited the vehicle. The concrete wall I was facing rose 30 or more feet straight up, then transitioned to raw rock. Light dotted the wall, bright LED strips built into the concrete itself. The rock wall continued upward, curving into a high dome. At the center, it had to be more than 100 feet up. Far to my right, I could see another wall. It looked roughly the same, though halfway down its length stood a set of doors. They had to be truly massive because the concrete sloped up to cover them. Though difficult to tell at this distance, the doors looked to be at least 50 feet tall. They were also very wide. Hazarding a guess would put them at 100 feet wide. It certainly looked like you could have 10 trucks drive through them with room to spare. The doors were closing. It looked like it would take several minutes to accomplish. The air inside the cavern was chilly, but nothing like it had been outside. I guessed it to be much closer to just below freezing instead of somewhere near 60 below. I tried to gauge the distance to the wall. It was difficult without a better point of reference. Many vehicles of various sizes were in the way, but I was not familiar with any of them. Some looked massive and could have been 30 or 40 feet long. Still, the wall seemed to be 500 feet away. Turning to my left revealed more of the wall curving away. It ended in a tunnel that was maybe half the size of the blast doors. That still put the tunnel at 20 to 30 feet tall and possibly as much as 40 feet wide. The far side of the cavern had to be a quarter mile away. The space inside was truly on a scale that boggled my mind. What looked to be 100 different vehicles were parked throughout the cavern with stacks of crates everywhere. People were constantly moving, forklifts beeped. A strange sort of order could be seen in the chaos. Finally, I could just see the edge of a small crowd. I squinted to get a better look and recognized a few people in the crowd. It was our office group. Between our vehicle and the crowd, I could recognize Castillo's bald brown head as he walked next to Velasquez. They were out of sight a moment later as they turned to skirt the crowd. I led Linda by the hand, heading for the group. A glance behind showed Larry and Jesse following along. I was exhausted from the day's events, but this was something else. It gave me a strange sort of energy. We joined the crowd at the rear. All I heard was a handful of words, but they brought relief to me. A weight lifted as the officer's words rumbled out. He had been talking for at least a little while.
You're all safe now. I just want to reiterate that. The doors are rated to withstand a nuclear blast. We are so happy to have found survivors on our last trip into the world. Let me be the first to tell you, welcome to your new home.
He paused, probably for dramatic effect. The dog barked into the silence. A few chuckles sounded, including the general. He smiled, then continued. Welcome to Project Osiris.